43, 44, 45. Yes, still 45. Same as yesterday. Same as every day since...
What is this? This isn't... There was a crowd. They were standing. They were applauding, and then... Is this a church? It smells like a church.
It is not a church.
Who are you?
Johann Sebastian Bach, composer, cantor of the Thomaskirche in Leipzig, former court musician at Weimar and Köthen. You may sit if you like, though I would ask you to choose a chair and commit to it. Last time someone came through here, they rearranged everything, and I spent 3 days restoring the order.
Bach. The Bach?
I was, at one point, considered a Bach among many. My sons were rather famous in their time. Now, apparently, I am the Bach. I find the distinction mildly amusing.
And this place is...
In between.
In between what?
Everything, I suppose. It is not unpleasant once you accept that the ceiling tiles do not change, and the temperature is always exactly the same. I have come to appreciate the consistency.
Of course you have.
Ludwig van Beethoven. I recognize the expression. That particular combination of genius and inconvenience is rather distinctive.
Fair.
How long have you been here, you ask? Long enough to have catalogued, sorted, and cross-referenced my entire output from memory. Twice.
And that didn't drive you mad?
Why would order drive one mad?
Because there's nothing pushing back. No resistance. No... You need friction, Bach. You need the world to refuse you something, so you can tear it apart and rebuild it on your own terms. This is just... stillness.
Yes, it took me some time to make peace with that as well. I simply do not advertise it.
You're not what I expected.
No one ever is. You are louder, however, even in person.
I've been told.
Frequently, I imagine.
Constantly. I once cleared an entire room at a dinner party in Vienna, just by tuning the piano.
A gift.
45 tiles.
Yes.
Have you considered that it might be 46 and you miscounted?
Get out of my chair.
Get out of my chair.
You know, since you arrived, something has changed in this place. There is a presence now, a noise, even in the silence.
Is that a complaint?
It is an observation. I have had considerable time to practice the distinction.
And I have had considerable time being observed. Critics, conductors, biographers. Everyone has an opinion about what I meant, what I felt, what I should have written instead.
Yes, death does not stop that, apparently.
No, it does not.
Someone left this.
What is it?
A document of some kind. It describes a system, a vast library of music, every piece ever recorded, organized, categorized, and distributed through something called an algorithm. A set of mathematical rules that decides what each person hears based on what they have heard before.
A machine chooses the music.
A machine suggests the music based on patterns, on data, on the behavior of millions of listeners simultaneously.
That is the most horrifying thing I have ever heard. And I once attended a performance of my own Fourth Symphony, conducted by a man who had clearly never read the score.
I find it remarkable.
Of course you do.
Think about what it implies. Every listener, every moment of attention, every piece chosen or ignored, all of it converted into information, into structure. The entire history of human musical taste mapped.
Mapped for what purpose? To sell things?
Among others, presumably. But the mechanism itself, the idea that beneath the chaos of human preference there is a detectable order, that is not a trivial idea, Ludwig.
You would say that. You spent your entire life building cages and calling them cathedrals.
And you spent yours kicking walls and calling it architecture.
That is almost a compliment.
It was intended as one. Partially.
But you understand what this means, don't you? If a machine decides what people hear, if the algorithm feeds them only what resembles what they already know, then nothing new ever arrives. No one is ever disturbed. No one is ever changed.
That is a fair concern.
It is not a concern. It is a catastrophe. The entire point of what we did was to put something in front of a person that they did not know they needed, that they could not have asked for. You cannot algorithmically generate the ode to joy because no one knew to ask for it before it existed.
And yet, the well-tempered clavier is, at its core, a systematic exploration of every possible key. I built a structure and trusted that within it something true would emerge. Is that so different from what this system does?
Yes, completely, entirely, without question.
Explain the difference.
You had a soul inside the system. The algorithm has no soul. It has no fear. It has never sat at a keyboard at 3 a.m, wondering if everything it has ever made is worthless. It has never gone deaf, Bach. It has never lost anything.
No, it has not.
Music without loss is decoration.
I have lost things.
I know you have. I read the document. 20 children, half of them dead before you were old.
Yes.
And you kept writing.
There was nothing else to do. The structure held when everything else did not. That is why I trusted it.
Perhaps we are not as different as I thought.
Do not be sentimental. We are extremely different.
Fine. But the algorithm, I still say it is a problem.
It is a tool. Like temperament, like notation, like the printing press that distributed my cantatas to churches I never visited. Every generation builds a new mechanism for moving music from one mind to another. This is simply the latest.
The printing press did not decide what you wrote.
No, but the church did. The court did. The Elector of Saxony did. I have never in my life composed in complete freedom, Ludwig. Neither have you, if you are honest.
The Heiligenstadt Testament would disagree with you.
The Heiligenstadt Testament was written for an audience.
It was written in despair.
It was written in despair, and kept, filed away, preserved. You knew someone would read it eventually.
You are an infuriating man.
I have been told. Less frequently than you, I suspect, but the sentiment is familiar.
Can I ask you something directly?
You have not stopped asking things directly since you arrived. I do not see why you would start seeking permission now.
Your wife, your children, you lost how many?
Maria Barbara died in 1720. I was away, traveling. I came home and she was already buried. Of the 20 children, 10 survived to adulthood. The others, some lived days, some weeks, 1 or 2 a few years.
And you kept composing.
The following year, I wrote the Brandenburg concertos. The year after that, the Well-Tempered Clavier. Yes, I kept composing.
How?
It was not a decision. It was the only available response. The structure was still there. The notes did not disappear because people did. If anything, the work became more necessary. Not as consolation. I do not believe in consolation, but as evidence that something held.
I wrote the Heiligenstadt Testament in 1802. I was 29. I had accepted that I was going deaf. I sat down and wrote what was essentially a farewell letter. To my brothers, to the world. I told them I had considered ending my life.
But you did not.
Only because of the music. I wrote that explicitly. I said I could not leave the world until I had produced what I felt called to produce. The art kept me alive.
Then we are not so different in that regard.
No. But here is where we differ. I told people. I documented it. I made the suffering part of the work, part of the story. You buried yours inside the counterpoint, where no one could see it unless they knew exactly where to look.
I was not performing for posterity.
Neither was I, at the time. But I have been told, apparently there is now an entire industry built around the idea of the tortured artist. The suffering as credential, as proof of authenticity. They have turned my deafness into a brand.
A brand?
A selling point. Beethoven composed the Ninth Symphony while completely deaf, as though the deafness were the achievement rather than the symphony.
That does seem reductive.
It is completely reductive. And yet, and this is what I cannot resolve, would anyone care as much about the ninth if they did not know? If I had hidden it the way you hid everything?
I did not hide it. I simply did not consider it relevant information.
That is either very healthy or very repressed, and I genuinely cannot tell which.
Nor can I at this point.
There is something else in this document. Apparently there are now doctors, specialists in the mind, whose entire purpose is to help people process suffering so that it does not overwhelm them. You can take medicines that adjust your emotional state, level it out, remove the sharpest edges.
That sounds useful.
You would say that.
A mind that functions is more productive than one that destroys itself. I watched colleagues collapse under the weight of their own temperaments and produce nothing in their final decades. I do not romanticize that.
A mind that functions is more productive than one that destroys itself. I watched colleagues collapse under the weight of their own temperaments and produce nothing in their final decades. I do not romanticize that.
That is not a fair question.
It is the only question that matters.
The Chaconne exists. Whatever produced it is no longer my concern.
It is mine, because I have asked myself the same thing about the late quartets, about the ninth. If I had been able to hear, if I had been comfortable, adjusted, medicated into equilibrium, would I have needed to reach that far? Would I have had any reason to?
You are suggesting that happiness is artistically useless.
I am suggesting that resistance produces form, that you need something to push against. Deafness was the wall I wrote the ninth through. not despite.
And yet you would not wish deafness on anyone.
Of course not. It was hell, every single day.
So we arrive at the uncomfortable position of being grateful for something we would never choose and would not wish on others.
Yes, exactly that.
I think most honest artists live there, in that exact position.
I would have been a terrible therapy patient.
Catastrophically bad, I would imagine.
I would have fired the therapist within the first session.
You would have composed a furious sonata about the experience and dedicated it to someone you had recently argued with.
Almost certainly. What would you have done?
I would have listened politely, found the entire process theologically questionable, and then gone home and written a fugue.
Same result, different method.
As with most things between us.
There is more in this document.
There always is.
Music. Current music. They have sent, I do not know how to describe this, samples. Fragments of what people are listening to right now.
I heard something earlier, through the walls, I think. A repeating pattern, very low frequencies. Percussion on every beat without variation. I assumed it was some kind of malfunction.
That is called reggaeton.
Intentionally?
Apparently, it is the most commercially successful musical genre on the planet at this particular moment in history.
The rhythm is, I will be honest, not entirely without logic. It is a pattern called Limbo. Syncopated, consistent. If you strip away everything else and look purely at the rhythmic architecture, it is not unsophisticated.
You cannot be serious.
I am always serious. That is both my greatest strength and my primary social limitation. The rhythmic grid is consistent. The syncopation creates tension against the downbeat. And the repetition is not laziness. It is hypnosis. The Baroque dance forms operated on exactly the same principle. A chaconne is also, at its core, a repeating pattern over which variations accumulate.
A chaconne is not reggaeton.
Obviously not. But the underlying mechanism is not as foreign as you would like it to be.
Fine. What about this one?
What am I hearing?
It is called trap. The percussion is made entirely by machines. There are no instruments in the traditional sense. And that, underneath, that low, repeating melodic fragment, that is taken directly from your prelude in C minor.
Which recording?
Does that matter?
It matters enormously. The tempo, the voicing, Someone took my prelude and built an entirely different world on top of it?
Without asking, without paying, without crediting you beyond a small note in the documentation.
That is exactly what I did with Buxtehude, and Vivaldi, and every French clavier composer I could get my hands on. I took their structures, rebuilt them, and made them unrecognizable. I called it learning. Apparently now it is called sampling.
You are not offended?
Why would I be offended? The piece exists independently of me now. It has been for 300 years. If someone finds it useful as a foundation, that is precisely what a foundation is for.
Someone used my Fifth Symphony in a horror film soundtrack. Slowed it down, distorted it, removed all the resolution. Just the tension, endlessly repeating, never arriving anywhere.
How was the film?
I have no idea. But the use of the theme was, I will admit this quietly, rather intelligent. The original intent was terror contained and then released. They simply removed the release.
So they understood the mechanism and exploited one half of it.
Which is either theft or commentary. I cannot decide.
Perhaps both. The best theft usually is.
There is something else I need to tell you. About Glenn Gould.
I have heard the name.
He recorded the Goldberg variations. Twice. The first recording in 1955. Young, impossibly fast, percussive, completely reinvented the way people heard you. The second in 1981, just before he died. Slow, interior, like a man saying goodbye to something.
And were they faithful to the score?
They were faithful to something, not always to the score. He hummed while he played, audibly, on the recordings. You can hear him throughout.
He hummed?
Constantly. The engineers tried to remove it. They could not. It is inseparable from the performance.
I find that either deeply irritating or strangely moving, and I am not yet sure which.
That is exactly how most people feel about Gould in general.
Did he understand the music?
Better than almost anyone who ever lived. And he made it completely his own in the process.
Then perhaps the humming is forgivable.
There is a conductor, Bernstein, who performed my symphonies as though he himself had written them. Arms everywhere, facial expressions, sweating through his shirt, the orchestra watching him instead of the score.
And the results?
Magnificent and infuriating in equal measure. Like watching someone tell your most personal story at a dinner party and tell it better than you ever did.
I would have found that intolerable.
So did I. And yet the recordings exist, and people still listen to them and feel something genuine. How do you argue with that?
You do not argue with results. You argue with methods. The results are not yours to control once the music leaves the page.
When did you make peace with that?
Approximately 150 years after my death, when Mendelssohn conducted the St. Matthew Passion and introduced me to an audience that had entirely forgotten I existed. At that point, one develops a certain flexibility about interpretation.
Mendelssohn saved you.
Mendelssohn decided I was worth saving. There is a difference. I had no vote in the matter.
None of us do, in the end.
No. We write the notes. Everything after that belongs to someone else.
I hate that.
But here we are.
There is a number in this document that I cannot make sense of.
Only one?
A specific one. It says that a recording of my Fifth Symphony has been streamed, played through this algorithmic system we discussed, 470 million times in the last 3 years alone.
That is a large number.
And the total amount paid to my estate for those 470 million listens is, are you ready? 0. Because I died in 1827, and the copyright expired approximately 70 years after that, and now anyone can use it for anything without paying anyone anything.
Welcome to my situation since approximately 1750.
Does that not enrage you?
I was employed by the church for most of my working life. The Archbishop of Leipzig owned my output contractually. Every cantata I wrote belonged to the institution, not to me. I was paid a salary, a modest one. I also had to teach Latin to schoolboys, which I found considerably more demoralizing than the copyright situation.
I refused that system. I was the first composer of my generation to attempt to live entirely from the market. From publishing, from performances, from dedications to wealthy patrons. I nearly starved twice.
And yet you consider your arrangement superior to mine.
I consider it more honest. You served the church. The church told you what to write, when to write it, how long it should be, what text to set. You were a craftsman with a brilliant mind working inside someone else's specifications.
And you were a free artist who spent half his life writing begging letters to aristocrats, and the other half arguing with publishers about engraving fees. We were both, in different ways, entirely dependent on people with money who did not fully understand what we were doing.
That is depressingly accurate.
There is apparently now a system where artists can receive small payments directly from their audience, monthly, in exchange for exclusive access to their work. They call it, I believe the word is Patreon.
That is just patronage, with a different spelling.
Precisely. Prince Lichnowsky gave you a stipend. Now 10,000 strangers each give you a smaller amount and collectively replace him. The structure is identical. Only the patron has been disaggregated.
Disaggregated. You have learned modern vocabulary.
I have had time.
The difference is that Lichnowsky could not cancel me with a single click.
No, he simply stopped the stipend when you insulted a room full of French officers. And he asked you to play for them, and you refused and threw a chair.
It was a stool, and they were occupying Vienna.
The result was the same. Patronage has always been conditional. The conditions have simply become more numerous and more public.
There is something else here. Concerts. Apparently there is now technology that can project a moving image of a dead performer, a hologram, onto a stage, and charge living audiences to watch it perform.
A simulation of the person.
A simulation of the person, moving, apparently playing, in front of a real orchestra and a real audience who paid real money.
Is that the purgatory?
I think it might be.
To be endlessly reproduced without presence, without risk, without the possibility of error or revelation. Every performance identical because there is no one actually performing.
They did it with a singer named Maria Callas. Apparently the audience wept.
Of course they wept. They were mourning, not celebrating. There is a significant difference between the two, and the industry has apparently decided not to notice it.
The industry notices whatever generates revenue. That has not changed in 300 years.
No, the mechanisms change. The incentive does not.
Do you know what the most commercially successful use of classical music is right now?
I am not certain I want to.
Background music for studying, productivity, concentration. There are recordings of my sonatas with titles like, I am reading this directly, Beethoven for deep focus, 3 hours of music to help you work.
3 hours.
The Moonlight Sonata, packaged as a cognitive performance tool.
I will say something that surprises you. I do not entirely object.
How can you not object?
Because music accompanying work is not a modern degradation. It is what music was for most of human history. My cantatas accompanied worship, which is a form of collective interior work. Dance suites accompanied movement. The idea that music should be listened to in reverential silence in a concert hall, that is the aberration. That is the 19th century deciding that art required a church of its own.
I helped build that church.
I know. And it was a magnificent achievement. And it also turned music into a monument instead of a practice.
So the student listening to the Moonlight Sonata at 2 in the morning while writing an essay about something they do not understand
is perhaps closer to the original function of music than the audience sitting in formal silence at Carnegie Hall, afraid to cough.
I need a moment with that thought.
Take your time. We have nothing but.
Can I ask you something about your sons?
You may ask. I reserve the right to answer obliquely.
Carl Philipp Emanuel, Wilhelm Friedemann, Johann Christian. All composers, all successful, some more than others, while you were still alive and largely unknown outside Leipzig.
Carl Philipp Emanuel was considered the great Bach during my lifetime. The progressive one. The one who understood the new sensibility. I was the old Bach, the complicated one. The one who wrote counterpoint in an age that had decided counterpoint was furniture.
Did that hurt?
I taught them everything. Every one of them sat at my keyboard and learned from my hands. And then they walked out into a world that preferred their version of music to mine. And I watched it happen in real time. Yes, it was not painless.
But you never said so publicly.
What would have been the purpose? The music existed. My opinion of its reception was irrelevant.
I would have said so, loudly, in print, probably in a letter to a newspaper.
I know. That is one of several significant differences between us.
My situation was different. I had no biological children, but I had Carl.
Your nephew.
My brother died in 1815, and I fought his widow. Fought her legally, obsessively, for years, for custody of the boy. I wanted to make him my son, my heir. I wanted to shape him the way I had been shaped, give him everything I never had.
And instead?
Instead, I nearly destroyed him. I controlled everything. His education, his friendships, his correspondence. I intercepted his letters. I moved him from school to school when I decided the environment was insufficient. I loved him with a completeness that left no room for him to exist inside it.
That is a precise and painful description.
In 1826, he shot himself. In the head. He survived. The wound was not fatal. But he survived, and then he joined the army specifically to get as far from me as possible. And I died the following year.
Did you understand, at the end, what had happened?
I understood that I had confused love with possession, that I had taken something I needed, continuity, legacy, someone to carry what I could not carry anymore, and placed it inside a person who had not consented to that weight.
Children rarely consent to the weight their parents place on them.
Did yours?
Wilhelm Friedemann was the most gifted, possibly more gifted than me in certain respects. And he spent the second half of his life drinking himself into irrelevance. He sold manuscripts. Some of them were mine. Some of them, apparently, he claimed were his own.
He forged your work?
The line between transmission and appropriation was not always clear in the 18th century. But yes, there were documents, attributions that did not hold up. Whether it was desperation or resentment, or simply the behavior of a man who had been told since childhood that he was exceptional, and then discovered that exceptionalism does not protect you from anything. I do not know.
And you forgave him?
I never had the conversation. He outlived me by 30 years, and I was not here to have it. Forgiveness implies a confrontation that did not occur.
Do you wish it had?
Yes. I think I would have liked to ask him if he was happy. Not about the music, not about the manuscripts. Just whether any of it had been worth it to him on his own terms.
I never asked Carl that either.
No.
We were both so certain we knew what was worth it.
Certainty is perhaps the most expensive habit a parent can have.
Or a composer.
Or a composer. Yes.
There is something else, about legacy specifically. After you died, your music largely disappeared. For nearly 80 years, almost no one performed it. And then Mendelssohn, a 20-year-old, conducted the St. Matthew Passion in 1829, and suddenly you existed again. Your entire reputation, everything people think they know about you, it was reconstructed by someone born 25 years after your death.
Yes.
Does that not disturb you? That the version of you the world knows was essentially curated by someone else.
Wagner curated you. He appropriated your late style, your harmonic language, your ideas about music as total experience, and built his entire aesthetic on top of them without, as far as I can determine, excessive gratitude.
Wagner was a catastrophe as a human being.
Most of the people who shape legacies are. Gratitude requires a kind of selflessness that is incompatible with the ambition necessary to reshape culture.
So we are both, in the end, inventions.
We are both, in the end, starting points. What came after us is not entirely ours. It never was.
I find that either liberating or devastating, depending on the hour.
As do I.
Ask me again after the next block.
We have covered a considerable amount of ground.
We have not resolved anything.
No, I did not expect we would.
Doesn't that bother you? An entire conversation, and we arrived nowhere.
We arrived somewhere. We simply did not arrive at a conclusion. Those are different destinations.
A very Bach answer.
You asked me earlier, through everything we have discussed, what art is actually for. The algorithm, the suffering, the industry, the legacy. All of it circles the same question, and we have been avoiding it directly.
Because it is the one question neither of us can answer without sounding either arrogant or naive.
Then let us be both. You first.
I think art is for the moment when a person realizes they are not alone in something they believed was completely private. That the thing they felt, the specific, unspeakable, unnamed thing, someone else felt it too, and had the audacity to write it down, or play it, or sing it. That moment of recognition, that is what it is for.
That is a romantic answer.
I am a romantic composer. It would be strange if it weren't.
It is not wrong, but it is incomplete. It assumes that the primary relationship is between the work and the individual listener, between the art and the person who receives it.
Isn't it?
I am not certain. When I wrote The Art of Fugue, I was not thinking about a listener having a private revelation. I was thinking about a problem. A structural, mathematical, theological problem. What are the absolute limits of a single musical idea? How far can one theme travel before it ceases to be itself? The listener was not absent from my mind, but they were not the primary addressee.
Then who was?
The problem itself. The music. Whatever it is that exists between the intention and the page. I was in conversation with something I did not fully understand, and the work was my side of that conversation.
God.
Perhaps. Or the structural logic of the universe. Or simply the next idea that had not yet been thought. I am not certain the distinction matters.
It matters enormously. If you were writing for God, you were writing for something eternal and external. If you were writing for the logic of music itself, you were writing for something internal and finite. Those are completely different acts.
And yet they produced the same notes on the same page.
The art of fugue. You left it unfinished.
The Contrapunctus 14. Yes. The final fugue. I died, or something intervened, before it was complete. It stops mid-phrase, in the middle of a thought.
Does it bother you?
Less than you might expect. A fugue that resolves completely contains its own answer. A fugue that stops mid-thought leaves the question permanently open. I am not certain which is the more honest ending for a piece about the limits of musical logic.
You are suggesting you meant to leave it unfinished.
I am suggesting that unfinished and incomplete are not the same thing. My 9th symphony was unfinished in the sense that I could hear things beyond it that I never reached. Your late quartets feel finished in a way that most finished things do not. The ending is not about completion. It is about whether the question has been honestly asked.
So art is for asking questions honestly.
Art is for making the question audible to someone who did not know they were carrying it.
That is the best thing you have said since I arrived.
I have been saving it.
Of course you have. You probably had it written down somewhere, cross-referenced and indexed.
3rd shelf, between the epistemology and the counterpoint exercises.
You know what I think?
I suspect you will tell me regardless.
I think we have been asking the wrong question. Not what is art for, but what are we for? The art outlasted us. The art of fugue is still unresolved. The 9th is still being performed. Whatever we were trying to say is still being heard by people who were not born when we said it. So the art clearly does not need us anymore, which means the question is, what did we need from it?
Evidence.
Of what?
That we were here. That something passed through us that was worth the passing. Not immortality. I have never believed in personal immortality in that sense. But evidence. A mark on something that outlasts the marking.
Yes, that is it exactly.
We agree on something.
Do not make it strange.
I would not dream of it.
45 tiles.
Yes.
I counted again. It is definitely 45.
I told you.
You could have been wrong.
I am occasionally wrong. Not about countable things.
Same time tomorrow?
We do not have times here.
Same non-time tomorrow then.
Yes, same non-time tomorrow.